Confessing, as I mentioned earlier, wasn't just confessing. It was a confession tied to making a covenant. You are making a covenant when you confess. When you're praying to know if something's true, the requisites are there. They're there in James. They're there in the promise at the end of the Book of Mormon. You need to have real intent. You need to be sincere in what you're asking. And real intent means you not only have a desire to know the truth, but you have a desire to act on that truth. Now, an interesting side in this thing, when you bring up the whole idea of that if you pray to the wrong God, that you might get an answer that would seem like it was right. And then you say that you know people that God had shown them that the Book of Mormon was erroneous when they prayed. One wonders who were, when you say that you did it once, this seems to imply that you got an answer that at one point you thought that it was God's answer, confirming the truthfulness of it, because you seem pretty certain that if you're praying to the wrong God, that you can get an answer that would be erroneous. But the question I would ask you is, if it's that easy to pray to another God, then how do you ever know that your interpretation of the Scriptures is right? Is God making sure that we pronounce His name absolutely correctly? That we say His right name? I mean, are we going to go into the whole Jehovah's Witnesses? What is the name of God? Because if you want to get into that kind of nitty-gritty and think that God doesn't know the intents of our heart, and that God will allow some other spirit when our intents are true and correct, and the best we can have them in any instance, that just doesn't line up with the idea of a just God to me. If God has this exact thing set up, and the intents of a person don't matter, then that's rather, ask and you shall receive, knock and it shall be opened unto you. If any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God. That's what it says there, is let him ask of God. It doesn't say you have to know God's name and it's this. It just kind of blows me out of the water, because that would mean that when you prayed, again, if my deductions are correct, and I have a feeling they are, because you seem pretty certain that people could get erroneous answers because they were praying to the wrong God, then what of these other people? What were they doing right when they prayed? And if they were doing it right and they got the answer that you believe is correct, then why are you forbidding them from doing that? Why are you saying that they shouldn't have done that? If they got the answer, they did, and it agrees with what you believe. And again, if this is all hinging upon if you're asking the right God, how do you know your perception of God is the right one? If you say the Bible, how do you know that your feeling about the Bible, again, going back to that very first question, how do you know your feeling about the Bible was correct, whether or not you prayed about it? How do you know that confirmation, that subjective confirmation that you believe was from God? How do you know it was from God? And what if you received a feeling like that in the future about some other book or about a person that claimed to be a prophet? Now, an interesting thing about all of this stuff is when it talks about in the Scriptures, in 1 John chapter 4, the very first, it says, try the spirits. Just kind of like when Christ warned of false prophets. Why would He do that? Why warn of false prophets? Why talk about trying the spirits if there was no reason to do it? If there wouldn't be true spirits, if there wouldn't be true prophets, why not simply do what is done in Islam and claim that there's no more prophets? Because there will be more prophets. If you look at the book of Revelation, the two witnesses that will go forward, and it says they'll go forward prophesying. Also in the book of Revelations, it talks about the Spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus. So if you're receiving revelation, if you're receiving prophecy, you have the testimony of Jesus. Likewise, if you have the testimony of Jesus, you would need to believe in prophecy and revelation and the spirit of prophecy. You would need to have the spirit of prophecy yourself. So, again, and this whole concept that you brought up was why was this man asking to know if the Ouija board was evil? I mean, what was his intent behind that? Would he want to know it was evil to use it? What are the claims of a Ouija board? So what, I mean, it's like people will bring up and say, well, shall I pray about the Satanic Bible? Well, what is it claiming? What is it claiming to be? If it's claiming to be the Satanic Bible, why do you want to know if it really is a Satanic Bible? Because you're going to use it? Well, clearly, I mean, if it's the Satanic Bible, whether it's claiming to be, if it is or isn't, why are you going to ask God that? And why would he give you an answer? Because your intent in asking that, well, what could you possibly do with that? I mean, okay, so I'm going to study it. It just doesn't match up. So if you're going to pray about something and you have real intent, you're going to be seeking for those things that claim to be of God. And so this whole idea of, you know, well, should you pray about this? Should I pray about that? Well, what is it claiming to be? And what have you received previously as witness from God? Anyway.